off?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for joining us.
I'm sorry. I thought this was a Teams call.
Oh, no, that's okay.
So I'm trying to scroll through, and I was 2
You're
buildings
good.
away.
You're good.
So,
thank you for hustling, and thank you for joining us.
yeah.
I know it's a very busy week, and we appreciate your time. And just to kick off, I wanted to just open up with a question about, you know, in driver interviews this week, and even just the storylines around, you know, pole night on Wednesday. You can tell Hendrick Motorsports takes a lot of pride in going for the Daytona 500 pole. Can you talk to us a little bit about that from the team's perspective, but then also from just how much work goes into that over the off season, and how to approach that?
Yeah, it's a big deal for us. We've got, gosh, how many years? You guys know better than I. 4 or 5 years now that we've been on the front row pretty consistently. And it's always been something we've strived for. The guys do a really good job. They prepare really hard. I guess if you go back and you look at it, we really started working on those cars right after Talladega to start getting prepared for Daytona. So that's a big deal, right? And we've got a designated group. We've got 2 guys that work on those pretty consistently. Shit on my breath. So it's a lot of hard work for those guys, but they do a really good job. Steve Berg, Corey Williams, those guys, they hustle through there and do a really great job.
That again, thank you for kind of the question and catching your breath there. So we will go to questions, and to take our first question, we're going to go to Jenna Fryer. Go ahead, Jenna.
Hey, Chad, how you doing?
Good. I'm out of breath, obviously. I'm getting old and out of shape.
Yeah, take a deep breath. Can you first update us on Alex's engine? What's going on there?
Yeah, so that's part of the stuff that we were digging into, Jenna. We were in inspection pretty late last night. They impounded the car until after the second duel. So they're just now getting into that and trying to figure out what's going on. But we think the engine's okay, but it's undecided just yet.
Do you feel any urge to preemptively pull it and forfeit the spot, or what's the thinking?
No, not yet.
Okay.
No, we've got 2 practice sessions tomorrow, so we'll get a look inside of it today with the borescope, look around, see if we see any issues like a scored piston or something weird like that. But if we don't see any issues, we'll go out and practice and make a decision tomorrow.
Okay. And then Williams going to a backup. I know that starting position doesn't really matter in this race, but is it disappointing to have one or maybe both cars drop off the front row?
Of course it is. Yeah, it's awful. We hope it doesn't happen. You know, and that's always something you're trying to weigh when you qualify in the front row. How aggressive do you get in the 150? Do you race hard? Do you not race hard? And it's a balance, but the only way for these guys to get legit practice is to race. And I think the 24 showed a lot of speed. We're all pretty excited about that. So I think they made the right call.
And what do you do at the track these days? Like, what's your role? And is it strange not calling a race?
Well, I haven't been there yet, so I'm still at HMS. I'm going to go down next week for my first weekend in this role. And I'm just going to kind of sit back and try to help the guys where I can, be a resource for them. Observe and just try to be there to help them. Obviously, we've got amazing crew chiefs and amazing teams. These guys don't need a whole lot, so I'm just there as a support role.
Was it weird not being here this week?
You know, for qualifying, it was really odd. It was tough because obviously the Daytona 500 qualifying is such a cool thing, like we spoke about prior. I was sad that I couldn't participate, but I was really excited when we got the front row. So it's a different thing for sure. But I'll be honest, last night at about 12:30 when that race was over, I was okay being home.
Thanks, Chad.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take our next question from Bob Pockris. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, good morning, Chad. I'm curious, when you have these issues, like this issue that the 48 has, is it nerve-wracking, or is it just part of working on race cars and you have these type of things?
Well, it is part of working on race cars, right? You're inherently going to have issues. It's part of motorsport. It's part of what we do. We push components, we push drivers, we push everybody to the limit. When you do that, you're going to have problems occasionally, right? It's so that you're kind of expecting a little bit. You never know where it's going to come from, but it's nerve-wracking because you don't know what it is. We supply engines to a lot of people. We supply gears and transmissions to a lot of people. So whenever you have a situation similar to this, it could potentially have some major downstream effects if you can identify what it is. So, you know, when you start to think of it that way, it does get tough and stressful, but you know, it's part of what we do.
And I'm also curious if you've had any meetings yet with Kyle Larson, and if, like, after practice, just what type of feedback did you feel he gave?
Yeah, we actually just got off a meeting with him, and I think he did great. He hasn't been in a car like this in a while. Obviously, I think we all know that. So it's new to him being in an HMS car at a super speedway, him trying to find his groove. But his feedback's great. He knows how to drive a race car. He's going to do a fantastic job. I think he and Cliff are going to be a great pairing. I'm really excited to see how that grows. So yeah, I think he's great. He's going to be a huge asset to our roster, and hopefully we can get some wins with him this year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to go to our next question to Jordan Bianchi. Go ahead, Jordan.
Hi, Chad. Thanks for your time. A couple questions. First, what was it like watching Speedweeks at home for the first time since, 2006?
Of course. That's funny how you remember that one. I did tell my guys, I was like, yeah, this is the first Daytona 500 I've missed since I started in a Cup, except for when I was suspended, right? So it's a challenge. It is, but it's really it's the right time. It's the timing is where it needs to be for me to step away from being a crew chief. Would I like to be in Daytona? Yeah, of course. I think that if the pandemic wasn't here and the roster situation was a little bit different, I would be down there, right? But it is what it is. Jeff Andrews is an amazing guy, and he and I are tag teaming this, and we're going to be switching off a little bit throughout the course of the season. So I know these teams are in great hands. I'm excited because I'm actually contributing to all four cars, at some level here. They've got some things that need worked on, and I'm trying to work on those here at home base. And like I said, I'll be down in Daytona next week for the road course race.
The second question for me is, have you guys determined what your strategy is going to be for Sunday, or is that going to be dictated too on what happens with Alex and where he starts, and then with William starting in the back now?
Well, and the rain too, right? It looks like there's going to be some rain. So
too.
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of variables, obviously, when it comes into this. But the strategy is obviously for us to work together, work as closely as we can as teammates with one another. Our Chevy partners are very important to us, so we've got a lot of allegiance with them, and we're just going to have to see how it goes. Obviously, we want to work together with our partners and our teammates as much as we possibly can, because as we all know, when you go to a restrictor plate track, there's strength in numbers, and we need to have those numbers to go out there and be successful to carry us to the end of the race. And then once you get to the end of the race, goodness, you don't know who's left, who's not left, what the situation is going to be, and you just got to kind of adjust as you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take our next question from Claire B. Lane. Go ahead, Claire.
Thank you. For fans that are listening, engines are persnickety, right? And so when you hear about Alex Bowman's engine, it's difficult for the mere mortal, to think about it. If you get the all clear from the engine folks, right? Will you still be biting your nails about the engine, or will you, will you think, oh, well, they gave us the clear, they did the look into the engine, and I'm not worried about it?
Well, that's a good word, persnickety, for sure. I thought that was good. Claire, it's tough, right? We're always going to have a little bit of doubt until you get going into the event. But our group at Hendrick Motorsports and our engine department, they do an amazing job of vetting out anything that could potentially be wrong. So they'll be in there with the bore scope, looking inside the cylinder walls, be looking into probably the tops of some of the pistons. They'll obviously look at the valve springs. And if they go through and they deem it to be fine, I don't think there's much more that we can do, honestly. So if they feel that the engine is fine, Alex even had mentioned that he felt like things had cleared up a little bit as the race went on yesterday. So we need to start looking in other areas, and hopefully we find whatever was suspect in creating that problem. And if we do, then I think we can all rest assured that we'll go into the race with a lot of confidence. But sometimes these weird things kind of creep up, and you can't really ever identify them. As you said, they're very persnickety items, and things can show up.
And so starting from the back in the Daytona 500, right? I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I've done it. It's not a huge deal. Obviously, you're exposing yourself maybe to some problems early on with, if it's hot and it's slick and guys are trying to find their groove, you could potentially get caught up into an accident. But honestly, Claire, I've gotten crashed leading the race at like lap 24 before, right? So it's you just don't know what's going to happen. I don't think it's a huge player in the whole scheme of things. The guys are going to be able to recover. I feel like our cars are fast enough that they're not going to have trouble rolling through the field and getting up to where they need to be. But just doing it wisely and mindfully is obviously very critical to not tear up your race car, because even if the whole field, I shouldn't say the whole field, but if a lot of the race cars crash out and you're one of the few 10, 12 cars at the end of the race that are out there competing for the win, the guy with the least amount of damage and the car that's most intact has probably got a better opportunity to win than somebody that has a car that's torn up. So we've got to be mindful of taking care of our equipment.
Good to see you. Good luck in the race. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire.
Okay, our next question will come from Kelly Crandall. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you. Hey, Chad. I
Hi,
just
Kelly.
want to kind of go over what it's been like in this role now for a couple months, what you've had your hands on, decisions maybe you've already made that we just haven't seen. What have you been doing in the shop and kind of overlooking?
One thing I've realized since I've taken on this position, I never finish anything. It just seems like you go, you initiate things, and then people carry out different roles and different tasks and get them done for you. So I don't know that I've done a ton. Obviously, we hired Rudy. That was a big deal. We got Kyle in here. That was a big deal. We've changed the structure in our pit department a little bit to try to get that a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more intimate with our athletes. In the shop, I feel the crew chiefs and the teams are just awesome. I don't feel like that our guys are second to anybody, our guys and gals. So they do a really good job building our cars and putting them in place. We've had a big focus on the Gen 7 car as it's starting to come together. Obviously, that's a big push for us, and we're trying to get our heads wrapped around that. So I'm really just here to try to help the crew chiefs, get them what they need as far as race cars, make sure that they have as much information as they can to make wise decisions, whether that be from a component standpoint or an aerodynamic standpoint or whatever it may be. So those are kind of the things that I've been doing. And again, it doesn't sound like much really, right? But it's just different. It's just a different role. Being a crew chief, you're very singularly focused on a car number. Obviously, you're aware of what's going on around you. You're aware of your teammates. You're aware of all of that. But you still just focus on that car number, and it's a little bit easier task. Right now, it's a pretty broad task for me. But we've got some really great folks here at HMS that I'm working with.
This might come off a little weird, but basically just why so happy? You seem just very light and happy right now. You touched on it earlier, just about being home during Speedweeks. That's different, but it just seems like life is good. This role, everything just seems good for Chad Knaus.
Well, right now I got a lot of adrenaline flowing because I just ran a half mile to get here. So that's probably a portion of it. But, I am in a good spot. I really am. It was time for me to step away from being a full-time crew chief. I was doing it for quite some time, as you guys know, and I was ready for a new challenge and excited about it. And obviously working with Jeff Andrews is awesome. He and I have a great relationship, and we share a lot of responsibility. I'm honored to have this job. I think that working with Mr. Hendrick and Jeff Gordon and Marshall Carlson and them, giving me this opportunity to sit in the seat and have a leadership role in this company, it's an honor. So I'm really excited about that. The biggest thing I don't want to do is let those guys down, right? So I'm trying to attack it as best I possibly can with a little bit of logic and let the smart people do their jobs and me there just try to back them up and support them. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've been working a lot of hours. There's no doubt. I'm still here really, really early in the morning, like about 6:45, and not leaving until, the wee hours of night, it seems like. So I'm not getting a whole lot of time at home yet, but hopefully after we get things rolling, I'll get some more time at home.
Thanks, Chad.
Yep.
All right, we're going to take our next question from Alex Andrea. Go ahead, Alex.
Hey, Chad. Thank you for your time this morning. Chase Elliott said recently that this was the busiest offseason he's essentially had in terms of racing during his Cup career. And so I'm just curious kind of what your philosophy is around racing during the offseason. I mean, and how you feel about essentially not having an offseason for drivers.
I feel that it's got to fit into what the drivers want, right? And if you're forcibly making a driver go and run races or test or things, I shouldn't say forcibly, but if you're encouraging that and they don't want to do it, that there's no value. But when you have a guy like Chase or Alex that they want to go run the Chili Bowl, or Kyle, he wants to go run an outlaw race or a sprint race, or William wants to go race his go-kart, whatever it may be. If these guys want to do that, I think that's the best thing that they can do during the off season, to stay sharp and keep learning how to be better drivers, right? And that's every time you sit behind the wheel of a race car, you're going to learn something and get better at something. Whether it's something you can definitely hang a hat on or not is could be argued, but just the reps are invaluable. So I thought Chase did a great job. He ran the Chili Bowl, he ran Snowball Derby, he ran some other midget races. I know he ran the IMSA race down at Daytona. All of those things I think will continue to help his knowledge and his ability behind the wheel.
And is that sort of a change that you've seen in him recently, or has he always wanted to do these dirt races or Rolex kind of?
Yeah, I think he's probably, I would say this year, to the best of my knowledge, this is the most aggressive he's been attacking that type of thing. Now, whether or not in years past he was running late model races and some other things that I'm unaware of, I'm not really certain. Obviously, I wasn't his crew chief and I wasn't in this position to really keep tabs on it. So, but I do know that he raced a lot this winter. And I think it's boding well. We'll definitely see as we get a little bit further into the season. But he's a young man and he's obviously very fit and gets enjoyment out of racing, and that's no different than if you get enjoyment out of playing baseball or doing something else, right? It's what he wants to do, and if he wants to do it, we want to try to support him.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to take our final question here from Dustin Long. Go ahead, Dustin.
Thank you, Chad. I got a couple questions, and one I want to ask you, looking further ahead to the Bristol Dirt Race. I know a race car is a race car, but certainly that's going to be a unique challenge. Can you give me a sense of how much different prepping a car for that event will be, or is it really going to be that different? First of all,
it's going to be significantly different. We've got a few guys that have some pretty significant dirt experience. Obviously, Kyle's got a lot of experience. We've got some crew chiefs that have some experience. Rudy obviously ran Eldora a couple of times in the truck. So what it takes to set a car up for there, especially a Cup car, is a little bit of a question mark. Fortunately enough, we're going to have some practice that we can kind of vet the cars out. But building the car and constructing the car, it's not so unlike what we're going to be racing in a weekly basis on the normal Cup schedule, because of what we've got, what's called the extended parts freeze, right? We've only got so much inventory that we can select from. So there's not a whole lot there that we can do. NASCAR has given us some guidance as to some suspension components that we can, maybe structurally beef up a little bit to make sure that they're durable enough to last 250 laps around that place. There's going to be some additional supports that we can do to the body, and some other precautionary things that they've put out there just based off of their knowledge from Eldora. So we're doing all of those things, but honestly, Dustin, as you really get down to the nuts and the bolts of it, it's still kind of the same car. The splitter can be modified, some splitter bars can be modified, some things of that nature, but you're not going to get much further than that.
Also, where does your focus turn to the next gen car? And does that become more of your role once the cars get delivered here in a few months, or is that just one of 50 million things on your plate?
It's one of the 50 million, honestly. So it's a huge initiative, obviously, for every team in the Cup Series to try to get this thing off the ground and running. And it's been slow to move, as we all know. Obviously, COVID has struck a struck us all down just a little bit, but it's getting some gears now. It's starting to move pretty rapidly. And we've got a pretty big initiative here at HMS and a lot of different little pods that we're working through some of these things and excited about it. I think it's going to be an opportunity for people to find an advantage and do well. I do feel Hendrick Motorsports, unfortunately, is a little bit behind because of our lack of experience with these types of cars. As you go back and you look at a Chip Ganassi Racing or a Penske or some of these guys, they have some transaxle or a lot of transaxle experience, the upright experience, these types of cars. And we've been so linearly focused here at HMS, just focused on cup racing, even to the level we don't even Xfinity race, right? That which has been very successful for us, obviously, right? We've won a lot of races, we won a bunch of championships by being that focused. It could be a little bit of a negative, and that's why we're digging on it so hard right now to try to get our hands wrapped around it.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, Chad, thank you so much for your time. And we really appreciate you hustling over here to be with us. We know you.
I apologize, you guys. I really am.
No, all good.
Thank you guys for everything that you do. We appreciate it. And for those of you in Daytona, enjoy it. And we'll chat again.
All right. Thanks, Chad.
Bye-bye.